Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Doctors of Running podcast, where we, a group of doctors of physical therapy, discuss the art and science of running and the stuff that we put on our feet. Tonight at the round table, we have the founder of Doctors of Running, Dr. Matthew Klein. We have Dr. David Salas and myself. I'm Nathan Brown, and we are excited to do a this or that episode together. It's always fun when the three of us are together to try to put things on the table that spark interesting conversations and figuring out where we differ in our opinions, both in personal preference in running, but also we have some questions today about how we approach rehabilitation as therapists. So it should be pretty interesting. However, before we get into the this or that episode, there's two things we want to do. The first is to remind you that this episode is powered by Scratch Labs. And if you're interested in checking out their stuff, they do a lot of hydration and have options for nutrition during running. You can check out their website and use the code DOR24 for 25% off your first order. Feel free to go check them out. The second thing before we jump into the this or that episode is to tackle a topic that is probably on a lot of people's minds as they're finishing up their fall races. There's a lot of people doing fall half marathons, fall marathons, and you're getting done with this race, and then it's kind of like what do I do now? So what I want to engage in with you all is talking about how do you best recover from a half marathon? How do you best recover from a full marathon? And then what do you do from there? Where do you go? What sort of mental processes do you go through? How do you move forward? So let's start with the recovery side of things. How do you recommend that people recover from, let's just start with a half marathon?
Enjoy the day first.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone celebrates differently, but I like to, get with my buddies, hang out, relax, kick back, enjoy the effort that you just put down on the road, or trail if you're doing a trail half. So, I think that first, I think a lot of this is dependent on, the experience of the runner as well. Some people, they're training to run the half, and like running 13.1 to them is a very big stimulus, and they're going to have to really recover from it. Others, that might not be quite as demanding for them, and they can probably turn over and even train maybe even that same week. So it can look very, very different depending on the runner. I think the half marathon is a much more doable load for the body than the marathon, where pretty much everyone takes some time off after the marathon, but that's not always the case with the half.
Yep.
I would say I'd very much echo David's comments where when you think about recovery, yes, I want to encourage, we talk about the musculoskeletal part where you're obviously maximizing your nutrition afterwards, your sleep afterwards is really, really, really key. Getting, rehydrating, recovering electrolytes. I would think the more I learn, the more I would also encourage that social part about go do something fun afterwards. Obviously not another race. Okay. But something that if social engagement is really important to you, I would really encourage you to think about that. There's something I'm thinking about with my students right now as they push really hard and they're in that part of the semester as they're starting to take midterms and going, you know what? There's multiple complexities and parts to recovery. So I'd say the social engagement is a really good one, right? That can fill your cup in multiple ways. But the other thing is if you are trying to recover as fast as possible, getting optimal nutrition, not only like within like that 30 minutes to like 90 minutes after the race. And that means good. And I know people tend to think that, and I'm going to say something very controversial and people are not going to like me for this. I know like people like to say, oh, like hit that beer, that post-recovery beer, but kind of the more evidence we're seeing on alcohol is that it doesn't really have much in the way of a ton of positive benefits. So if you're not someone that does that or partakes in that, I encourage you kind of not to and focus on whole foods, good nutrition, protein, carbohydrate. And then obviously getting sleep, like a nap would be really good. Making sure you get a good night's sleep afterwards are kind of the key things, whether you're doing a half or whether you're doing a full. As David also mentioned, what that next couple of days looks like is going to depend on where you are in your training. Half marathons for me have typically been something that I can recover pretty quick from. I'm not going to be doing workouts very soon afterwards, but usually I can at least do like a moderate run the next day, like not a moderate distance, not moderate pace. It's going to be easy. So my legs will still be sore if I'm going after it. But yeah, just like easing your way back in, avoid doing really hard workouts because it's going to take several days, if not a week or so, to be able to even think about doing that if you're someone that's in that kind of shape where you can handle like hard efforts like that. Whereas no jumping ahead, the marathon, the more we learn about how much tissue damage that leaves, like you really need to think about some time off and that doesn't mean go hit the bike hard the next day because that's off. It means you need some serious rest and time for your musculoskeletal system to recover. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think something that David said that was poignant was it kind of depends on where you're at in your running journey. If you've ran marathons or half marathons for the last 15 years, that's very different than if it's kind of your first or second time. So I think the first factor that I consider of how you go about recovery and how much time off you take from running starts with how much running experience you have, like yearly kind of chronic volume on your legs. I think the second is how hard you ran the half marathon.
Right.
Because as David said too, if you raced it, that's very different than if you ran it. And I think that if you're in the category of somebody who raced a half marathon, it taxed your musculoskeletal system. It's also going to be doing things to your other systems as well, the demand on your renal system and your heart and all these things. Like there is acute damage done to those things, not damage in a bad way, but damage because you worked them really hard. That's what we do when we work out. We damage our muscles. So I think if you have raced and you're newer in running, I like to say take one whole week off of running. Do some walking, do some gentle biking, just low impact stuff for like that week after, but let your body really take a beat, especially if you're newer in this space and you raced it. I think that time off is really valuable while you're making sure that you hit a lot of nutrition, as you had said, Matt, and sleep. So I think that those are two factors that are important. But like there's on the other end of the spectrum, people who race half marathons all the time are going to be able to jump in and go on an easy run the next day. But that's not everybody. I know for me personally, my biggest mistakes have come by being like, wow, I just worked so hard to gain this fitness. If I take a week off, I'm going to lose my fitness and I'm going to go step back and I'm going to not be able to be where I have been. And I've fallen into that trap where it's like, okay, I'm going to actually just try to keep pushing through. And that's when I've personally ran into injuries as well, is where I don't take just the time to really pull back, just reflect for a while, let my body totally recuperate. Because the type of, just from a muscular perspective, after an all out half marathon, you're at least doing grade 1 tears to your muscles just from a workout, maybe even in some cases a little bit more than that. And we know that's a 3 to 7 day recovery period. And if you really, really tax the system, you're going to be a little bit more than that. So it's just, I think that depending on where you're at, if you're very new in the running and you raced it, getting a week off is going to probably suit you well. I don't know what y'all think about that.
I would definitely agree with that. It's something that I kind of wish I'd been more aware of. I wasn't coaching Regina during this time, but when my wife was really going after the ultra marathon road stuff, and we'd hit I can't believe we did this, like a 30-mile run on Sunday, and it would be at 7:30 pace. And I just don't know how we got through that. We'd go back to just doing a normal run the next day. And I think kind of being smarter and knowing what I know now, I've been like, I would have at least taken a day or so off after that, just to let even though we were getting used to that distance and doing that frequently, I still, with that kind of thing, think retrospectively would have taken a day or so off the next day just to try to let my body recover and like actually adapt to some of that training. Cause you don't get better while you're running, you get better while you're recovering. And so if you're not recovering adequately, that's where you start to see the risk for things like injuries as things don't build back up in time for you to push them more. Yeah. So
do you think there's room for an active recovery in that conversation where, let's say you are an experienced runner, you can run 30 because it's Sunday, that's not a flex. That's the reality of your training and where you've been.
Yep.
And the next day, what if it wasn't 7:30 pace? What if it was 8:30 to 9-minute pace?
It was 9-minute pace.
Right.
I was slogging through. Like, why did you make me do this, Regina? That was terrible. Why do I?
So if you did like a 30-minute shakeout, just to get the legs moving, would that be worse than having the day off completely?
I think yes. I think that there's evidence to say that active recovery is better than just sitting and doing nothing.
Right.
I think what that something is going to so much depend on where you're at. So I totally agree with you, David. For many people, I think of you even, you're going to be able to race. Matt, you too. You're both going to be able to race and then go out and run the next day. Mm-hmm. Me, I need the time off from a true race. Even my 10K, I made the mistake a couple weeks ago and I was like, I was going to take a whole week off. I was like, I'm going to just do it right this time because I haven't raced in a long time, even from a 10K. And then my friend was like, hey, do you want to run tomorrow? 30 minutes easy. And I'm like, yeah, I'll be there. And then it was that run that I started feeling my foot again, and it's fine now. But it was just I knew that I needed the time based on where I was at. But the active recovery, I think, is massive. And it's just choosing what that active thing is. And that's why for many, it might be a walk or a bike instead of another run.
Right.
But for others, it's going to be like, yeah, go jog, get that shakeout because it's going to be good for you.
I think part of to add to that conversation, the more I'm talking to people and just kind of questioning training and things like that, I'm someone who's like an obsessive runner that runs every day, also for mental health. But the more people I'm talking to going, you know what, I've kind of moved away from the, and if some people do this, it's fine. I'm one of them. But other people are going, I know I can't run every day. That actually during normal training, I've just found that, 3 to 4 days a week is my max and I'm running at a competitive level. And the other days I got to think about cross training. So there is variability. And I think what we're hopefully getting at is encouraging people to find what works for them and make sure that they train at the level they're at and not someplace that somebody else is at, because what we adapt to is very different and how we adapt is different between people. It's kind of off topic, but just thought.
No, I think that's huge. And then if we expand this out to the marathon, are there any other major changes? We don't have to go as in depth, but I think, in my opinion, if we expand it out that way, the amount of tissue damage, multiple system impact, it's just a longer time off or a longer time with modification.
Especially if you're racing it. Like, I think a lot of people can get through training runs because a lot of their training runs, some people do go up that high, like 20, like David, you did 22 today, right?
Yeah, I did 22 this morning.
Are you going to run tomorrow?
I am, yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, like if you do it as a training run, that's fine. But when you start going into those, when you do a real race effort, when you're putting yourself at that 100% effort, whatever for the distance is.
Oh yeah, you're shredded.
Yeah. That's not something that you recover from. I was just talking to Regina about this, that when you race, especially as you get longer, it becomes less something you like adapt to. And it's something that you have to recover from. Like a lot of times, like workouts, for example, you can build on a workout type race. You could build on, like many people that do marathons will do a half marathon kind of like race pace or like, that's something you recover from in that kind of training. But when you race, you're putting everything out in the line and you're shredding yourself, as David said. So I think when you race, that's something you need to think about a little time off afterwards, especially as you get to the marathon, knowing that when people put those 100% efforts out there, it can take 3 months to truly recover, even if you're still running, just from the damage that caused the musculoskeletal system. Not saying it's bad, it's just you have to respect the distance.
Yeah, not all miles are equal when it comes to how you run them.
Yep.
I think my philosophy when it comes to figuring out where are you at on that spectrum is that running is a lifelong sport. And so take your life to learn it. And because you have your life to learn it, I verge on the conservative side, especially when I'm coaching athletes, is to pull them to a spot. Hey, this is only your second or third or first ever half marathon. Let's see how you do with a week recovery. And then next time we come around to putting down a full race effort, if you recovered completely fine from that and there were absolutely no issues with injury or niggles or whatever, then we pull and we can start to run earlier again and start to build in the next phase of the training. But, it depends on where you're at, right? Like if you are new into this, and I would even consider myself, especially for the marathon, I only have I would say 2.5 under my belt. I did like a 24-mile race around a trail in our community. And I feel like learning, what do I need afterwards to recover right from this stuff? And take your life to learn it. And don't be afraid to be a little conservative if you want to avoid something just like dumb happening on the tail of just breaking down your body, because that's what you trained for, is to break it down as much as you can to get to the goal that you set for yourself. Matt, go ahead.
Can I add something that is slightly off topic, but it's on the same thing of thinking long term. And this is to address all the listeners who are nice enough to send us messages that we don't always get to, or that we try our best. We get a lot of questions going, hey, I have X injury. I've got this race coming up. Should I do it? And I think the more experience I get, the more I think along Nathan's view of like, if you're really asking this question, you should probably skip it. It's just not, like, to me at this point, it's not worth it. But like the focus on longevity, the knowing that there's always another race, always another time, I would really encourage skipping these things. If you are injured and your running mechanics are not where they're not normalized, and you're going to be limping your way through the race, I'd really encourage you to save it for, there's always another race, right? And I don't think the risk is worth it. To go, hey, I'm going to push through this and then potentially have even longer that I have to recover now that I pushed this already injured tissue to a whole nother level that I have to recover extra from. So when in doubt, if you have doubt, skip it. It's not worth it.
The last question I have on this or David, did you have something?
I would just say to weigh the risks. I feel like for the most part, 90% of the time I agree with you. Mm-hmm. But sometimes someone's in the absolute shape of their life and they're racing for a standard or something where they have a deadline and that next race isn't going to be there.
Yep.
And so sometimes they have to weigh that themselves of what they're willing to see on the other side of it, where maybe I come out okay, maybe I don't come out okay, but you leave it out there.
Are we talking about like I'm talking about the recreational runner? You're talking about like pro, collegiate,
but there's
stuff
that
like that,
too.
right?
But there's also Boston qualifiers, and I mean, because you could make the argument that someone's like, well, I have to have it done by this window, and so I can apply to run it next April.
Yeah,
I have X amount of time to recover, and if they are truly in the shape of their life and they feel really confident about doing it, like,
or it's like, I'm going to turn 40 and my goal is to run a marathon by the time I'm 40. And if I don't do this one, I'm not going to, and that could be an important goal for somebody.
That's fair. So I didn't mean to downplay people's goals.
You didn't. We also agree with you 90%. We agree with you 90% of the time.
Yeah. I'm just saying that there are special,
there's always
circumstances that sometimes it's just up to the person to weigh those
That's very
risks.
fair. Yeah.
I mean, and sometimes it's not worth it, right? They go for it, they decide to do it, and then they just get hurt, they don't finish, and now everyone's kind of at a loss. But sometimes they do it, they feel great.
That's fair.
Maybe their body doesn't, but
they're glad they did it.
Yeah, and they're glad they did it, and now they can come back around for whatever it is they're trying to go do, of what they set that up for. So,
all right.
Last thing on this topic is outside of the physical. How have you personally moved forward mentally after a big race where either it went the way you wanted it to or it actually didn't go the way you wanted to? And what advice would you have for folks in moving forward well after something that you trained so hard to get to?
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, there we go.
It's going to sound like almost like an anti-answer, but the thing that I always think about is to have a short memory, and that's for good or for bad, because at the end of the day, you're going to wake up tomorrow and it's the next day and the race was in the past and whatever you have in front of you is in front of you. And so it's like if it's a bad race, you can it's okay to be mad and frustrated. That's okay. You obviously care about it. Give yourself a little bit of time to be mad about it and then move forward. And some people, like, they do really well with having a literal time window to be mad or happy about things. And then they're like, okay, now I can enjoy the rest of the day. I've been mad about it. I can, and it's usually
tacos.
It's usually more on the mad side of things, but on the good side of things too. It's like, at the end of the day, it's like, you see this a lot with people that do something big in sports where they go and they hit some monumental thing. And then they're like, well, what now? Right? Like I did it. I'm still doing my sport. It's kind of like finding that why, and like, really why are you doing it? What are you out there for? And if that was it, then maybe, I don't know, like if that's truly was the peak of someone, then maybe they retire or something, but not to go extreme with it. But it's usually to have just kind of a short memory, give yourself some time to feel whatever you want to feel. And then you can always reflect on it too in a day or two. I'm not a big fan of same day reflections because you obviously have a lot invested in it. And there's a whirlwind of emotions, whether it's positive or negative. It doesn't really do you much good to dwell on it. And so just to try and be relatively objective with yourself and kind of, it's almost like you're sitting someone else down to be like, okay, well, let's talk about this and let's see what you think. I'll tell you what I saw and what I thought, and we'll go from there. And to have that reflection with yourself, but at a time when you are at a more neutral state to do it.
Yep. And
then from there, you can take what you've learned or haven't learned and apply it towards the future in whatever that looks like. Whether it's, if you're doing a season, that obviously you have to turn it around within, a couple weeks of whenever your next race is, or even a week. Sometimes you race multiple times in a week if you're doing a track season as a high schooler or a college athlete. Or if it's like a marathon and you're doing a half marathon building up to a marathon about 4-ish weeks out. Okay, so I did this and this that I didn't like. I did this and this that I liked. How can I clean that up for when the big day comes so that I can have as smooth of a process as possible? And if it was your A race, and that was the thing that you were training for and peaked for and did it, well, you have plenty of time to reflect, so there's no like, but I don't know. I think to have a short memory, but then you can always come back later and review it. But I don't think the day of, I'm a big fan of short memory.
Yep. That's good. I agree with so much. I think I've heard it from a lot of different athletes and in different realms, not just running. And then other people in like mental sports performance, they talk about the 24-hour rule. I know you said like some people put a timestamp. That's one I've heard a lot where it's like feel all the things, whether good or bad, for 24 hours and then begin to move forward. But I think that being able to, on this side of the recovery of kind of the mental moving forward, I think it starts way before even your training block begins. It starts with where running sits in your life, in your identity, and figuring out how much is this one race going to impact me, making sure that one event is in its rightful spot in your like value and worth as a person. That might sound extreme, but I think it's easy for it to trickle into like putting so much weight on this one day that when it happens, it can take you over. So if you can do enough work on the front end and like right size all of the things when it comes to running, it's going to help you to move forward in a healthy way with the good or the bad. Because I think the risk of the elation and feeling good is like, all right, I'm going to keep training. I'm in the best shape of my life. I crush this. I'm going to go. And that's where you could run into some of that injury. And on the reverse side, it's just like beating yourself up for a bad thing. Like feel it. Like, you didn't do what you wanted. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was saying on the flip side of that, you feel invincible the day of, and you're like, I'm going to get after it. And then you get up the next day and you feel like a train hit you.
Yeah.
And then some people, that is actually very defeating psychologically, where I thought I was doing well. Like, why am I not feeling good? And it's like, well, you just put an all-out effort out, my guy. Like
you earned it.
You earned to feel like that. Like that was a genuine effort. But for some people, they struggle with that. Like some people, they feel like they need to feel good all of the time. And that's just not the case after a race.
Yeah.
And sometimes after your best races, you can feel invincible the day of, but like it comes back around.
Totally. Matt, do you have anything to add on this end?
No, I was reflecting. I ran my first cross-country race in a very long, like.
Oh, did you do the Stumptown?
Yeah, I crushed.
Didn't see that.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't see it. It was bad.
How'd it go?
I mean, I wasn't prepared for it all. I don't think I was like, I'm going to throw myself in here, and then like got really into like that competitive mode and just got wrecked and had to come to terms with being in a very competitive part of the United States when it comes to like running. Yeah. And also for the first time in a long time, having to deal with finishing in the back half of a race, which was, I definitely, all the things that we talked about today, except none of the positive things, but all the negative things. Being like, I think I'm going to quit racing, and I just, it's not part of I want to let go of this part of my identity.
XC is tough.
Which I like totally wasn't prepared for anything remotely cross country. I chose the wrong shoes. I got super nervous. I was going to use like a trail super shoe, and then freaked out and pulled the Takumi Sen out because like I need the lightest thing. I don't like, and then it just didn't have traction and it fell apart. Plus, not some pretty significant things happened this week, very negative, that I've been able to have awesome support from the faculty at George Fox for that really, but it took a huge piece of took a chunk out of me. So there was a lot going on, but I definitely had that negative spiral. And Regina's like, "Oh, why are you being like a sourpuss?" And so I kind of had to come to terms and like this. I put way too much pressure on myself. Just let myself be upset for a little bit. Woke up this morning. I'm like, it's a new day. Like why? Like, yeah, that makes sense why that happened.
Yeah.
If I want this, I need to train for this. And I'm going to do the whole Stumptown series for anybody who wants to come kick my butt at the other ones. I was also really mad that like all this stroller training did not like transfer at all to like running cross. Like
no, not at all.
Got crushed.
That's the opposite of stroller.
I thought it'd be so much stronger. No, turned out, yeah,
Cross is a skill, man.
Yeah, it really is.
Being
If you
able
don't
to
have it.
turn and be in grass and go with ups and downs, and especially like when it's real tight. Like Nate, I don't think you've never run a cross race, have you?
Nope.
Dude, it's
I've
hard.
ran on 2 cross country races before, or on 2 cross country courses.
Yeah.
It's just very different, and everyone gets so bunched up, and like you're just basically trying not to fall for a couple miles. And then really eventually it opens up, but it's like, yeah.
By that time, it's too late because you've already gone out hard, been boxed up, and then the wheels fall off. So yeah, this morning I was like, you know what?
What'd you go out in?
I don't even know what it was. We started on grass, on muddy grass, and went up this steep hill and like I have no idea. It was like 5:58.
Okay.
That was not. Yeah, but
my favorite cross stories are like, oh yeah, we went out in like 4:40. Can you even run that for 3? No, but it's an 8K, and like, and people just die so hard.
Yeah. That's hilarious.
I was that person, except not like 2 minutes slower than that. So, yeah. And then this morning I woke up because I was just like, oh, I'm just not going to do the rest of the races. Like they can keep the rest of the money for the series that I paid for. And then I was like, no, I'm going to do the whole thing, and I'm going to have a better attitude about it, even though I'm probably going to be a sourpuss next time after I get my butt kicked too. But it's going to make me better, and it's just trying to get used to getting into things and being patient and looking at that long-term thing. So I definitely agree. Just let yourself be upset, and like it's okay. It means you care, even if you didn't prepare for it and you didn't deserve to do well. But yeah, think long term. Remember that kind of stuff. That like those experiences are character building. So it was good.
Good. Well, we are going to move into our segment on this or that. So we have things related to shoes. We got things related to physical therapy. So here we go.
Can I add this or that?
Sure. Oh gosh,
that's not on the list.
Let's start with it. Go ahead.
Just to build off of what we just said. Okay. Assuming you're not that experienced with or experienced with both, cross country 5K or track 5K.
Ooh.
With a full field, so it's going to be a busy track. It's not going to be like 10 people. It's going to be like 20 to 30.
After how bad I got wrecked yesterday and the fact that I'm doing a lot more stuff on the track, probably a track 5K, to be honest.
All right.
I've never actually raced either of those, but I think I'm more intrigued by doing a cross 5K.
Cross is more like fun, to be honest. I mean, if you have the right mindset going in.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me. I think I might go cross 5K right now. Track 5Ks are hard. They're both hard. But I think with track, the thing that's hard is when you have a heat of people and everyone can all run the same time. And it's just like this thick pack, and sometimes the strings, it can be very hard with all the like kind of zigzagging, kind of the pushing. Like in cross, I feel like it does break up. It almost always does, like halfway through the race. And I think there's a little bit more like the first mile kind of always floats by. Where like I think in track, you're very cognizant of your splits because you see them every 200 and 400 meters at most races. And so there's always this idea of like math going on in your head. Like, am I on pace? Am I not on pace? And like cross is a little bit more true racing where you don't really get those numbers unless you're at the mile splits.
That's cool.
Cross is I can't tell what the pace is. Can I just not die? Can I just hold on?
It's a war of attrition.
The finish? Yeah, it's like, where's the finish line? Is it the, oh my gosh, I'm almost there.
That's what seems intriguing. Great. Well, here's our next one, our no longer first on our list, but here we go. A shoe that people have used a lot and that all of us have recommended to folks for certain conditions was the Endorphin Shift series, which is no longer around. So the first this or that is, what is the better replacement for the Saucony Endorphin Shift? The Glideride Max from Asics or the Brooks Glycerine Max?
I feel, can I answer that?
Yeah, go for it.
No, you don't get to answer. Of course you can answer it.
Yeah. I don't feel like either one of those. Like personally, the Glideride Max to me was like, okay, this is interesting, but it didn't continue on with where the Glideride was. It's a different shoe where it's not as stiff. Yes, it is still rockered. It's not as stiff. It kind of lost that really stiff rockered profile that the previous ones were known for. So I feel like that kind of really takes it out. The you said the Hyperion?
Glycerin Max.
Glycerin Max.
No, what was the other one?
Glycerin Max.
Glideride Max, and then Glycerin Max.
Oh, I don't know why I heard Hyperion Max too. Okay. So having just done 11 in the Glycerin Max, I'd probably say that's much closer to the two. It's the taller ride. It's stiffer. Actually, that I was talking some smack about that heel bevel. It was not bad this morning. It was great.
It's a softer foam.
Yeah. Yep. So I would say the Glycerin Max, which I was pleasantly surprised with this morning, not nearly as light as the Shift,
no,
but definitely got that nice stable. It's definitely softer. I wouldn't consider it for workouts though, but yeah, thanks for letting me talk through this. Walnut. Yeah, I would definitely say the Glycerin Max, but it's still not that Shift 3 replacement.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, and so my answer is both. And it depends on what you want, because the Shift is a high stack rockered shoe, but it was always kind of a stiffer EVA kind of a feel.
Yep.
If you want that like EVA kind of a feel, the Glideride Max is going to be closer to that. But the what's up?
Didn't it have the like PIBA
it does.
insole or like underfoot?
I'm just saying,
what was it?
You're
the
saying
underfoot
the Shift or the
the Am I nuts?
Just the insert.
Just the insert. Okay.
Yeah, but it was like more of like an EVA rocker.
It was power room.
Yeah. And so, like,
especially
if you want like that feel, the Glideride Max has that. But if you want the stiffer rocker of it, because the Glideride Max has a little bit more flexibility than the previous Gliderides. Mm-hmm. So if you really want that stiff rocker part of it, and you're okay with going softer on the foam, because that Glycerin Max foam is on the softer side, then if it's a geometry thing, Glycerin Max. If it's a feel thing, then I would say Glideride Max.
Yeah, I have some similarities with you there and a couple differences, but I think for the folks who want the stiffer forefoot and for the people who I was recommending the shoe for the sake of like hallux rigidus where the big toe can extend, I think that the Glycerin Max is the better option because there's less toe spring, so it's not putting the toe into extension in the first place, and it is a little bit stiffer just because of how much foam is here. However, I think that from a ride perspective and kind of what feels a little bit faster is the Glideride Max. And so I think you get a little bit more of the like long run training feel that the Shift gave you in the Glideride Max. But for the purposes of kind of working around if you have limited mobility in the big toe, I think that the Glycerin Max is a better choice. However, the rocker is quite different on the Glycerin compared to the Shift because it's such a late stage rocker. The apex, it doesn't come till right up where that first toe joint is. Whereas going back to the Shift, it started much earlier. Same with what you're seeing with the Glideride. You have an earlier stage rocker, which just gets you rolling a little bit earlier. So I do think that is a potential limitation if you don't get along with a later stage rocker. And I feel like I need to say this. I had a really tough experience testing out the Ghost Max 2. And a lot of the feedback that I gave of what I wanted it to be a running shoe, they actually put into the Glycerin Max. It's not fully there because there isn't like a performance element to either shoe, I would say. But I will say that the foam feels like a running shoe. The geometry is a little bit shored up. The softer foam allows that the heel transition to be a little bit more smooth and not clunky like it was in the Ghost Max. So Brooks did a much more pointed job at making this one a running shoe compared to the Ghost Max 2, which wasn't pleasant to run in. Anything else to add on this one? Or another shoe that comes into your mind that is a better replacement for the Endorphin Shift?
This has been a question, to be honest, for a while, and I don't have an answer. I'm curious, David, do you have anything Shift-like that comes to mind?
It'd have to be, give or take, somewhere in that 35 to 40 range, stiff rocker, a little bit wider base. Shoot, man. And it'd have to be kind of a little bit more of a stiffer kind of, like the forefoot rocker has to be pretty relevant.
Yeah.
I mean, just saying that the Glideride series, generally speaking, would match that. Obviously they made the changes with the new model. I'd have to think about that one and get back to you, honestly.
I think for me, like, I think the Glideride is pretty close. It is just a little, even though there's still a plate, the softer foam makes it a little bit more flexible. But within Saucony's lineup, I said this when it came out, but I think that the closest thing to a shift replacement is the Kinvara Pro, where it's got a stiff rocker because of the plate. It's not super soft, even though it has like a layer of PIBA. I think that might be, but it has some toe spring and it's much higher stack, so it doesn't fully replace it.
Can I throw one out there that I actually haven't tried, but some of the specs match? And I'm probably going to mispronounce the name, so a few people making fun of me in the comments. The Topo Atmos. Thoughts?
It's different.
Okay, I never ran in it, so
David, you did, right?
Yeah,
I did. Yeah, the EVA is a little bit softer.
Okay.
The toe spring's pretty gradual. It's a rocker. It is pretty wide. Like you said, on paper, it looks pretty similar. I'd say it's just a little bit more spongy through the heel. They kind of have a little bit of a crash pad there, and then forefoot is a little bit more flexible. It's still stiff, but it's kind of like the Glideride Max in that way. But it's not a bad one. It's actually that's one of the closer things that I can think of. Yeah.
Great. Well, we're going to move on to our next one. And I think this is going to be a tough one to answer. However, let's do our best. This or that, soft or firm shoes?
For what?
That's all we got. That's the prompt.
Considering I hurt my foot with soft shoes, I'm going to go firm.
Yeah, I actually go firm too. And what's hard about this question is it's a spectrum, right? And at what point does a shoe cross from soft to firm? But when I think about the shoes I like to train in, it's never the max soft ones like the New Balance More V5 or the 1080. Like, I do not gravitate that way. My voice is disappearing. I am so sorry. Not sure why, but the shoes that I gravitate toward have a little bit of firmness to them. They would still be considered soft if you compare it to like, I don't know,
5-10
to a lot
years
of the
ago.
shoes that we ran into 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. But from the spectrum of wicked soft to more of that moderate firm, I go on the firm end of the spectrum because I get foot stuff too. I just don't like that unstable platform and feeling lost in the shoe. What do you say, Matt?
So I have an interesting conundrum is that I have noticed that the softer a shoe is advertised, the less soft it feels to me. So, and I think the reason is because I get reflexive stiffening of my lower extremity. So we've talked about the study from Kumala and others talking about the fact that, more cushioning doesn't necessarily mean more protection, where the softer you go and the more material, as you land, because your body already has lots under it, it shifts from focusing on shock absorption to stability. And a lot of times that means the joints, you will go through less range of motion because you're stiffening up to try to create the stability that's not under your foot and ankle. So that's where I felt like the Glycerine Max is soft when I was walking, but as soon as I started running, I'm like, this feels weirdly firmer than I would expect. And I'm noticing that with a lot of shoes. So I'm someone who's going to gravitate towards firmer shoes. Obviously not too firm. I still want, like, especially if I'm racing, like I want like that nice bounce, but I don't want it to be mushy because I can't handle that. And the mushier it is, the more it feels firm, which is interesting. It's like I have this, like, there's this peak, there's like middle level where I feel shoes are softest, and the softer they go, they weirdly start to feel firm. And then when I get firmer, I'm like, okay, so that's something I've been experiencing recently. So yeah, that was a long way of saying probably on the firmer end.
Yeah. Cool.
I will say too on mine, so like the A6 GT 2013 has been working really well for me. And I'd probably say, I mean, on the cushioned end of firm, out of the spectrum.
For sure.
And then, but the one that doesn't match that in theory would be the On Cloud Monster Hyper. But I would argue that
That's
one,
firm.
That's firm. That's on. That's on shoes. That's how it
but
goes.
it's got a thick layer of that Helion HF. But it is firmed up because of the
Yeah.
Cloud Tech rim that is put on it. Like if that wasn't there, that would be a soft shoe.
Softer shoe.
Yeah, but that's what makes it more stable. Softer, yeah.
So that'd
David
be my,
had to bring up the Cloud Monster Hyper.
that'd be my justification for that.
Yeah, I like it.
Did you just bring that up just so you could talk about that shoe?
No, I'm onto a new hype.
kidding.
The A6 GT is my new hype.
Got it.
All right,
And the Carter Coney.
Here's our next question. You could get one or the other. You can either get a new PR or you get to run a bucket list race for yourself. Meaning a race that you want to be able to go and travel to. Maybe Tokyo Marathon's been on your list. You get to go do it. Or would you rather run a PR?
How much of a PR?
You just get a PR. A PR you can be happy with.
Yeah,
like, that you can be like, okay, I did it. I'm happy with that PR.
Does this include races that require you to run a certain time to go to them?
No, no.
Like Olympic trials or something like that.
Yeah, because like that would take a PR.
Takes a PR to go
Yeah.
to a
Let's
goal
keep
race.
that out of it. Like,
Let's take the trials out.
yeah.
But you could include Masters Masters US championships or something, because that would be doubled in
That's
with
fair.
a normal race.
Can I answer that as a two-part?
No. Yes, of course. Go ahead.
So I'm going to answer that with where I am right now, still holding on to an ego and going, I want to run X time because I think that's representative of who I am as a human being. And I think I'm slowly coming to terms of letting that go and wanting to actually be able to do races or things that it's actually an experience. Especially things like getting to the point where, thinking about, I don't know if this is possible, but I would love to be a Masters runner and go to like a world champs and feel like what that's like, or a US champs or something like that. And that'd be a really cool experience. And obviously that's not going to be a PR, but right now it's a PR. I have a feeling in watching my trajectory that that's going to change to being, I'm looking for a really cool experience. And I hope I have the maturity to be able to choose the goal race.
I will go on the record and say I think you can still PR, Matt.
Yes.
Let me have my pity party. But yeah, I think that is.
He's still feeling that. He's still feeling that.
I think
that cross country race.
I had a great conversation with a wonderful individual this morning about a lot of times when we PR, we forget the time that it took to get there. So like a lot of our college PRs are built off of college, high school, and even before that. And it takes a long time to get there.
When you're also just in a competitive environment constantly. Like that does change how you do things in race. And
so if you've had challenges and like you kind of had to put that secondarily and then you're coming back, you have to be patient with yourself and give yourself that time. And that might be 6, 7, 8 years. If you're willing to be patient, stay healthy, keep putting the work in and being consistent, it just might take some time. So again, that goes back to that longevity and the lifelong thing that Nathan talked about. So I have a very positive outlook walking into this stuff. So we'll see what happens. Definitely knocking out stroller PRs for sure.
Yeah. I think right now I would pick a bucket list race. I would love to be able to go run some of either like the ones that pop into my mind is like go run Big Sur when
you
the
really
course
want to
isn't
run
falling
Big
into the
Sur.
ocean. It sounds fun.
That sounds awful to me, but
because I wouldn't want to, you can't PR there,
Right.
or I couldn't PR there, either that or some of the cool like trail races. Like if I got a chance to go run Leadville or, just some of these cool type races, I would much rather do that right now and perform terribly and
just go be a part of the culture.
Yeah. Than PR. I think because I don't have a competitive history in running, there's a higher chance that PRs can come. But I would rather get the opportunity to go do one of those cool races. And I haven't thought very deeply about what those bucket list ones are, but I'm sure there's plenty. That would be fun.
Question. Big Sur is what race distance?
It's a marathon.
Marathon. Do they have other distances or is it just the marathon?
I don't know. I mean, I've never looked at the race personally. It's hilly over there.
Yeah, it is. They should have an intro, like a 5K, 10K race.
I mean, it'd be beautiful, like it'd be a gorgeous run, I don't know. That's a hard 26.
They should have a 5K, 10K called the Little Sur.
Well, there is Little Sur.
Wait, there is?
Yeah. If you go a little south from Big Sur, there's Little Sur.
This is not falling. This is actual, really?
I'm not trolling you, dude.
Oh, ruined my joke.
But yes, we could have a Little Sur 5K
They should
and
have a
10K.
little. Yeah,
They do have a 21 miler race. Instead of doing the whole marathon, you can do 21 miler to finish in their
mini, sir.
Here, I want to, keep
Man,
going.
that bombed.
David, what do you say?
I'm 0 for 2 on jokes today. The other one I can't repeat.
Oh, total gain in that marathon is 2,182.
Yeah, screw that. Like you're like Big Sur. I'm like, that sounds awful.
Dude, it is a beautiful. I've heard nothing but really good things about how great that course is. And
I'm sure it's gorgeous.
A great time.
It's a beautiful coastline, and you'll have a terrible and a great time at the same time.
The race directors listen to this, going, "Wow, thanks for talking negatively on our course."
David, what's your answer?
I think the appeal with that race is going to Big Sur. It is a beautiful place on this planet, and it is unique. So nothing against Big Sur. I actually just went up there recently. So for me, it's kind of funny. I don't really come from it from like an ego standpoint. I just don't really have any bucket list races.
Fair enough.
I don't really, there's nothing that I'm like, wow, I really want to run that. Like I haven't run a major, and I know the day will come eventually. But I haven't exactly been like itching to be like, oh, I got to go run New York. I got to go run Boston. I got to go run Chicago, Tokyo, whatever. I think I'd just take a PR, I'd be happy with the PR. I'm still kind of in that mindset, not necessarily, I just want to get faster and run well. And it doesn't necessarily matter on what course that's on and where it's at, I just don't really have any like major destination kind of races. It sounds kind of lame, but I don't really, I just don't have them.
Dude, you should do Fontana Days half marathon for your.
Do you think I could break 105 on that?
Yeah, for sure.
You think so?
Yeah. I don't know if you could ever walk again, but
that would hurt.
For the listeners that don't know this is a Southern California thing. This is in Fontana, California, or those, as they used to make fun of it, Fontucky, but that's a different story. Sorry, Fontana. It's a completely downhill half marathon that's pretty steep, right?
Steep.
Like,
steep.
Yeah. So
they have a 5K and a half.
I don't know what the drop
is, but
I don't remember. It's
drop.
pretty massive. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to move us forward, and the goal now will be to have more succinct answers so we can get to a few more of these. All right. Let's see if we can do it.
What would we do without Nathan?
Our next question is in relation to you sitting there as a physical therapist and how you like to employ your care for runners. So, this or that, manual therapy plus exercise, or exercise only?
I like manual therapy and exercise. I do. I think sometimes manual therapy can open up a window, of function that sometimes people might be fearful to approach or do. Maybe it gives them a little bit less pain. Maybe it improves mobility a little bit, and then they can now go and utilize this window to work on things exercise-wise. I think if I have the person there in front of me and there is something to address, I think we can address it and then follow it up with exercises. Yeah, I do think that's probably where I lean.
I lean very similarly, especially in the process of building a relationship with the person that you're with. If you can identify something that you can make an early change on, it can potentially lead to conversations in a relationship that's going to lead to longer standing impacts and buy-in with the plan of care. If you can show meaningful changes, I think there is sometimes movement within the profession, for those who aren't in the profession, to move away from some of the manual therapy, whether that's massage or joint mobilizations or whatever it is, because they're not showing long-term benefits in comparison to exercise alone. That's not across the board for everything, but in some cases. But I still think that there's just such value beyond just long-term outcomes that manual therapy can afford you as a therapist and as the person working with that PT. And I'm a huge proponent of utilizing it when it's indicated to be able to make that short-term change, just like David said, and build that relationship.
I'm totally on the same thing. I think
I'd be very shocked if you said otherwise, being a fellow of the manual therapy.
I was just going to say,
there are, and again, to kind of tag on, to be honest, there's been some times I've kind of gone back and forth on that, just like many in our profession have gone, asking and there are some patients who, yes, the physical contact that comes, that like making a connection point with a human being can make a very big impact on how people feel if utilized appropriately. You just have to be careful that sometimes there are certain personalities that become very dependent on that. And if you're going to emphasize independence, you have to be very cautious with what intervention you choose. I'm very much the one going, the evidence suggests actually usually a combination of interventions is usually more effective than single ones alone. But I'm still very much someone who show me what's going on and let me address the impairments and the issues at hand that are unique to the person in ways that are important to them. So if manual therapy is not important, I'm not going to use it. If they're an independent person, don't touch me, I just show me what to do so I can get out of here. I'm like, great. Let me give you exactly what you need. But if I can use manual therapy to change how someone perceives their function is, which is a lot of kind of our understanding of a lot of what manual therapy is doing, is it's less sometimes structural changes and more like changing how the nervous system responds, how the person even views what they can or can't do, then for sure I'm going to use that to modulate pain to hopefully give someone a better idea of what they're capable of. The other thing is I'll show them as a way of going, you can actually do this for yourself, right? I can show you how to mobilize this. And I will show you first, oh, look, that feels better. Or how does that feel? Oh, it feels better. Great. Let me show you how to do that. So very much if I'm going to use any manual therapy, I'm not going to do anything that I can't show the person how to do themselves, because I really always want to give power back to that human being because it's their body.
Great. So here's another question for you. And I think it's pertinent in the realm that we live in, where there is a lot of information online. There are a lot of really skilled physical therapists putting their knowledge online. We also put our thoughts and our knowledge online as well. So when you consider your position as a physical therapist, treating physical therapist, this or that, people having a physical therapist and going to physical therapy, or do it yourself rehab?
This is assuming an injury, or this is assuming
something pops up. Yes, assuming an injury.
How bad are we talking?
I know this was the point of the question. So why don't you just talk about it?
Yeah, because I feel like if it's something that's relatively minor, like maybe they just had a little increase in their mileage or something, there's a chance that they just work on a couple things they see online and do fine and come back around and have no need to ever see me, and that's okay. But obviously, if something's truly impacting your ability to move, walk, live, run, sleep, if it's affecting you, please come in. I think it just depends on the severity of it. And then that's not to say that in the first situation, they don't come in either, because they could try some stuff. And if it's just not working, or they just want to have some guidance on something and have someone look at it and be like, hey, what do you see? Then physical therapy is the route there. But if they start a little program on something, like you said, there's a lot of PTs online now that are putting things out, and there's a lot of good content out there. Mm-hmm. And if someone feels comfortable ciphering through it and trying a couple things out and seeing how it goes, there's nothing wrong with that, and then if it doesn't work, then you do consult a professional. But I think with the access to information, it's actually kind of nice. It's kind of like what we do here sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, we make some basic recommendations and someone tries it and listens to the podcast. Hey, that worked. Thanks, guys. It saved a couple $100 and, and time, right? So yeah, I'm a fan of it. I just think that there's a time and place, and I think the person just needs to be honest with themselves. And if it's working, it's working. If it's not working, it's not working. And if there's a true injury that's affecting your daily living, then you should go see a professional. But if it's something small and minor that you could probably shake,
give it a shot.
Yeah, it's worth a shot.
Yeah, I'm very, very similar in my position on this as well. I think that a lot of it also comes down to how you as an individual process your injury that you're going through, because sometimes all of the information online can be paralyzing, because you can find conflicting information from different folks, and then you're like, well, is this actually what I have? And then you try it one time, you're like, did I actually do that right? And depends. So if you're that kind of person, my recommendation would be find a PT that you can just have in your back pocket that you really trust, that is super analytical. They don't even need to be a runner, to be honest. But if you know that they are a critical thinker, that they are able to analyze your movement and understand you as a person, then you can just like put your eggs in that basket and kind of like let go of trying to figure it out. Let them do the work for you and just trust their word. But that comes with building trust and finding that PT that is actually going to take the time. But if you're somebody who can have a nuanced view, knowing that, hey, I know that I'm having this pain kind of up by my butt, and I don't know if it's like actually something in my glute or if it's my hamstring insertion. Like, I don't actually know what it is, but I know that that's where my pain is. I'm going to at least just give these a shot, but not kind of hunkering down too hard on that and like ingraining your beliefs with what you may be learning online. Because the tricky part is people like us, when we put out stuff online, we have a specific person or audience that we're trying to reach with the message, and it might not be you. But if you think it's you and you hear that message and it's conflicting from what your PT who actually looked at you, that can get confusing. So I think it's a lot of more of a mental decision in how you handle different sources of information than it is even just the injury that you're dealing with itself. So, but yeah, I think that there's a lot of valuable information if you can utilize it and just keep moving forward without having to kind of fall off the wagon and have to put in a ton of time and money into medical care. I think that's awesome. But also, if you can find a PT that you can always go to and trust, I think that's definitely a biased opinion, but I think that's a huge thing for a runner, having somebody that can really know you and figure you out early. Matt, do you have thoughts?
I totally agree with both of you. I just have to acknowledge that my biases come from where I work and where I currently work, having come from a Kaiser model where I may not get to see people very often. So my practice changes from like, if I see you, I'm expecting that I might not see you again. And that's kind of how I even do my private stuff, where my goal is to go, I want on one visit to be able to not only help you figure out what's going on, but also make sure that you have the tools to treat this and kind of not need me unless something new pops up and you really need help again. It's like trying to empower people quite a bit. It's the same thing kind of where I'm working right now. We're kind of setting up some primary care PT stuff with the same mindset of going, yeah, we're here as a really to help you understand what's going on and direct you where to go, not necessarily being the ones you have to come in 3 to 4 times a week and do that. But like, yeah, I think I see our profession, maybe this is me biased, of moving into we are teachers, right? And our goal is to empower people instead of thinking about that multiple day a week, becoming the lifelong, practitioners that can follow people. Like, when you need us, we're always here, but each time we're going to try to teach you something and give you skills, and hopefully throughout your life continue to build through that, so you also know how to take care of yourself too. So yes, I'm a little more biased on that, and I think I'm just repeating what you said, that the content out there, if it helps you, awesome. That's what we want. If you feel like that's not working and you need to have somebody take a look at something, and even the act sometimes of having somebody like put their hand in that area and let you know what's going on can be super helpful. So yeah, I think it's a balance, and I think helping people utilize physical therapy appropriately is really key. And the more independent we can get people, the better, which a lot of medical systems don't always like, because that's not as profitable. So that's a different challenge.
It's like another rant and conversation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, let's finish up with one more this or that. We're going back to the shoe world. And the question is, this or that, rigid or flexible forefoot for easy day and daily mileage?
Well, adding a piece, sorry to do this, on that last conversation. If it's post-operative, by the way, like surgical stuff, different conversation.
Yes.
Completely different conversation. Come in.
Yes. Like,
you need to be in, it needs to be followed, check. That's different.
Yes.
Like some neurologic diseases, stuff like that, also very different. So this is for your classic outpatient orthopedics. Anyway.
Great. Rigid.
What about pediatrics?
That depends on who you ask. I've had some very smart people at George Fox challenge me with that. And I don't know, because I'm not very experienced in peds, but
acute care.
We don't see them that long anyway.
I know. I'm just messing with you.
We get like one visit sometimes to get discharged on the next place. So inpatient ER is probably not the best place to ask that.
Equestrian.
Yeah. So stiff or flexible forefoot for easy running, correct?
Yeah, for kind of daily mileage, easy running.
I would say personally for me right now, with where my Achilles is at, this is actually not bad. I would say a little bit more flexible forefoot. If my Achilles is a grump, then I'm going to want something stiffer and more rockered.
I tend to lean more flexible for my easy days. But I like long runs, though. I do kind of like having a little bit of a stiffer rocker. So the 22 that I did today was in the Super Blast. But I would never run a Super Blast really on an easy, normal day. Like I pretty much like the GT, like that has flex grooves. It has a little bit of stiffness up front. I feel like most shoes now have some stiffness. It's not like there's not really that many true flexible shoes anymore. Yep. There are some, but I like having some flexibility. I don't like it being super rigid all of the time.
Slightly off topic, David, do you feel like the Super Blast 2 is different in terms of like its tolerance to easy runs compared to the first one?
That's a good question.
Sorry, let me not bias you. Do you feel like they're similar or different?
I would say the Super Blast 2 is a little bit more responsive. And if I'm truly doing just like sloggy miles, I probably would opt for Super Blast 1.
Mm-hmm.
But for like very slightly up tempo or like, even like just like a normal daily pace, but like for the long run today, I think this is not to just like flex numbers, but like for me, like easy can probably be anywhere from, 7 to 8 something, and today I think we went like 7:18, 7:19, like I feel like under 7:30 pace-ish, it feels good, but I wouldn't want it for like those 7:40s to 8-minute kind of paces. So whereas the Super Blast 1, I probably could have. So it's like just a little bit faster where it works for easy days, but it has to be like not a sloggy easy day. I know that's a very muddy answer.
Yeah, I feel the same.
Sorry, Nate.
No, it's great. I'm actually going to ask us one more this or that question that wasn't planned on, because we've actually gotten a number of questions, emails, suggestions on this singular topic. And it's about the conversation related to, and I think it's coming from a good place. And the people who have sent us these thoughts and questions and recommendations know that this is something that we talk about. And so I want to bring it up here. And the question is, when talking about a shoe and how it performs, should we talk more about the effort that we're putting in and how the shoe responded to that effort? Or should we talk more about the pace and how the shoe responded to that pace?
It's funny. I was a little disappointed because I thought this or that was going to be Squirtle or Charmander.
Oh, darn it. Yeah, I have gotten a lot of thoughts about that too.
Definitely Charmander, obviously, by the way.
No, it's Squirtle.
It's obviously
younger
Charmander.
Me would have said Charmander, but older me says Squirtle.
Yeah, well, I'm still going with Charmander regardless. Can I go? So following up, Nate, I think I would have answered you very intensely with pace previously, but my actual answer which is not a great, I don't know. I always thought pace because we're trying to individualize this and knowing that mechanics can change to a degree under speedier conditions. So as people increase their own speed, there are some similarities, but there can also be differences. And some people may not be able to run certain paces, yet might have mechanics that actually look quite similar to that. So I'm not really sure. My gut instinct is to stay away from an actual pace because that pace can be a very different thing for different people. So my gut is to say effort, but I understand where people are coming from wanting that pace.
I have a mixed answer. So I would think for the larger context and very large majority of this answer, I would say effort. I think in 9 times out of 10, that'll get that across. The only reason why I have that kind of 1 out of 10 reservation is strictly in the realm of performance shoes. There has been some murmurs down the grapevine. I'm not going to name any names or anything, but I've heard that there has been a variety of different responsiveness that can be with the output out of shoes and like changes on certain economies and things like that based on the amount of force going into something. And that can be largely independent by pace. But
yeah, and
in the grander context, effort.
Yeah, I think I'm with both of you, and I'm with you, Matt, in saying like I don't think I really know yet either. But what I think I do know is that there's intersectionality of all of the different factors beyond just effort and pace, because it also probably influences, your other mechanics differences regarding your cadence. Maybe it has something to do with your body weight. There's a lot of different pieces that could play into how a shoe feels at a certain effort or pace or both, depending on who you are. So I think it's way too complicated. That I think in that point, maybe it's good for us to just say both, and people can do their side of it and saying, hey, I'm very similar to that runner. Maybe it would respond differently. I lean towards the effort side of things overall. But I think when it does come to pace, David, you referenced down the grapevine stuff. And then there's also published research about differences in running economy improvements between faster and slower paces with super shoes. So there is something to be said about pace, but I don't think outside of those performance shoes, there's that much to be said.
Yeah.
Like a shoe that is, if I were to talk about like putting in a 5K effort with the Glycerine Max, I don't think it would matter how fast I'm running that 5K. If David was running that 5K and I was running that 5K, we'd probably both say this was way too heavy to be able to like put down the effort,
That honestly sounds daunting.
Would you this or that run a 5K in the Glycerine Max or something, Yes,
or
another
marathon in a Vivo barefoot.
Yeah, there we go.
So I would opt for the 5K.
I would probably opt for the 5K too. Many years ago, I probably would have done the opposite, but now I can't do that.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I think it's tricky, but I think that effort actually gets you a lot of the way there. I do think that when it comes to performance, I'm with you, David, that there's something to be said about how fast you're moving, and especially for people in your boat where it's like, how does it feel at those top paces? Because for me, if I'm going to go run a marathon and I trained for it, I would try to be training to run like sub-8s, maybe 7:45, 7:30, something like that. And for me, that's not fast enough for like a lot of the factors to really matter, because I could throw on a lot of different shoes, and at that effort and pace, they would all perform pretty similarly from a feel standpoint. And it would matter more about my preference than it would the actual pace that I'm running. So, Matt, you're going to say something.
A last piece just to think out there. There is some research that does use pace, like you have to be running this pace and below. The challenges and why some of that is really difficult to publish is because the reviewers will go, well, how do you know that effort is the same? Because there's a lot of very good research that suggests that effort is actually one of the best indicators of performance. And this has been done a lot in cycling, especially a lot in running. So the research, and I say this because this is actually something I'm in the process of setting up right now, is looking at what happens at different paces. And so a lot of the protocols like Brian Heiderscheit over in Wisconsin's using is you start at whatever that person's unique, Nathan, standard running pace. You start at whatever an easy pace is for them. So that could be a variety of things, but you're looking at their standard effort. And that is the baseline, whatever pace that is. And then you increase that by 10% a couple times to get a different variety of getting into faster efforts. But that's going to be that those paces are still going to be unique to the individual. And so that's been the more accepted method in the research world, which is where I'm going, because I'd also like to get published and not have to deal with a ton of reviewers being super like, we're not going to publish your stuff. But it's an interesting combination of the two of them.
Mm-hmm. So I think functionally, as it rolls out from us, you probably won't see a specific standardized way that we talk about how a shoe responds to us, because we will probably choose the one that we feel is most appropriate, knowing that there are going to be people who wish that we shared pace for every shoe and the efforts. You might get a combination of them from us, and that is somewhat intentional because we don't want to put too many eggs in a specific basket, and we have a lot to learn. And so if stuff comes out and you have stuff to share with us, we'd love to learn and, change the way that we think based on evidence. Super, super open to that. And we will, when it's appropriate, try to share both sides so that if you do want that information, we can just give you what you want in that sense, because it's not going to hurt anything at the same time.
I wonder if we could give the effort and then what that pace is at that point in our life.
Right. I think that's what they're hoping for, which I think is very reasonable to ask.
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting conversation.
Yep.
With the Heiderscheit stuff, we should actually have him on the show to talk about.
We really should.
We should just have him on to talk about cadence, because he's kind of the cadence guy.
Right.
And
Brian, does cadence fix everything? Is that the solution? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
And he would say no.
I know.
But I think he's a pretty smart guy, obviously. Yeah. And, when you're talking about self-selected and then 5 and 10%, a lot of that research is within self-selected cadence and then changing cadence. And then they would assess biomechanical differences at 5 and 10% above and below their self-selected. Really cool how the patterns change between people with cadences from 160 to 180 as they're self-selected, but the changes that happen biomechanically when you increase their own self-selected are all pretty similar. It's awesome. So we should have him on. I'll reach out to him.
Do you think that if we had him on, the episode go pretty quick because you have higher cadence to be a little quicker turnover?
I don't know what his self-selected is.
David, thank you for laughing at that. Nathan's trying to ignore me.
No, I tried to keep it going, but clearly it was a bad joke.
I think it'd be fun. I could probably go invest in some Big Ten gear from a different school and just.
I would wear my badge.
That could be worth it. I have no connection to that conference whatsoever, but maybe a Hoosier shirt. I don't know,
dude. If I wore,
that'd be fine.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Or I kind of like the Gophers. There's just something fun about Golden Gophers. I don't know.
Yeah, have fun with that. All right, we're going to wrap things up. Thank you all for joining us for this or that episode. We always have fun doing these together. Thanks for being on this journey with us.